So first, I want to start with the stress test final rule that was approved. Why do you think the stress testing rule is necessary at this time when the large credit unions do their own stress testing currently?
Well, first of all, because of the size of those credit unions, collectively way in excess of the share insurance fund, it's imperative that the entire industry have confidence that under the worst case scenario that the credit union system will survive. I mean, that's one lesson we've learned from the corporates where we felt that at the time that there was adequate capital and it evaporated overnight. So it's imperative for a prudential regulator, just as it is for the banks, the feds, and the FDIC, is to ensure that the capital planning of these very large institutions. So that's why it's important. Number two is we're in a good window right now of a lot of where there's not a lot of risk at the very moment. So now's the good time to do the planning and the institution of stress tests rather than under stressful conditions, so that credit unions will get used to the assumptions and the protocols. The third part is you mentioned they do stress testing now. We don't know exactly what they do, and certainly they say they do stress testing, but that may not be as we have learned, exactly the same thing that, say, the FDIC or the Fed understands to be stress testing. And certainly there is no commonality between the two institutions, or the 4 or 5 institutions right now that are sharing that information. So it's not exactly the same. And to be fair, as has been mentioned in the comment period, we need to have similar assumptions that base risk based on each institution to give comparable results throughout the credit union system.
Now, are you concerned about the costs of the stress testing for the first year or year two as well? And also, are you concerned about the possibility of NCOA doing the stress test in the future and the preparation for that possibly being challenging?
I'm always concerned about the cost, but the cost is always measured on both sides of the balance sheet. The cost of performing something like a stress test to ensure that you have adequate capital in the system, and the cost if you don't do the stress test and find out the hard way, instead of a few million, that perhaps billions of dollars, as was experienced in 2008 and 2009. So as I mentioned in the board meeting, we insure each depositor up to $250,000 of their deposits in the event of any failure of a credit union. The 5 covered credit unions collectively have 7.5 million members. And to do these stress tests to make sure that we are adequately able to cover costs and make sure that risks are avoided is equivalent to the insurance that we are providing 20 members of those 7.5 million. So it's a very, very cost-effective way to approach it.
I wanted to move on and ask you about another hot topic, risk-based capital.
I've heard of it.
The proposed rule, you've heard of it. The trade groups have asked for an extended comment period the second time. This is their second request, 90 days, a 90-day extension. Do you support that?
Well, we've already given them an extended comment period. In fact, as we speak, that comment period is still open. Once we passed the proposed rule, we were delayed in getting it to the Federal Register. So essentially, it's about a 120-day period now for written comments. And we've received a lot of those, and it's over a month away before that comment period ends. So number one, if you look at the history, this is the longest comment period we've had in a decade and a half for any rule. So I think it's commensurate with the importance of the rule, number one. Number two, I would suggest to credit unions that if they haven't commented yet, that if this is that important, and I believe it is, it should be a priority of theirs and they should start getting their comments in. Number three is we have scheduled listening sessions. One of the things that was requested, as you recall, is that we go out and talk to the credit union community about this rule. And the Chairman Metz has taken the lead on that, and I'll be joining her this summer on listening sessions, on both coasts and in the heartland. And what is important for us to do is to have those written comments in so that we can address all of those in an effective way once we have the listening sessions and take each issue that has been brought up. So I think the system works well, the time frame works well, and they'll really inform the listening sessions when we get there.
So you don't think the comment period should extend through the listening sessions in the summer?
No, because essentially we're always listening and people are always commenting. And, we're going to be taking the information and having a dialogue during the listening session. But the written comment period is what we're talking about. It's important to have that homework in so that we can actually respond effectively in the listening sessions and actually come to some conclusions together that are in the best interest of providing safety and soundness for the system.
Now, I asked board member Frizel about the NCUA's decision to take down the risk-based capital calculator after the comment period ends, and he said that the calculator should not have been open to every credit union to look at other credit unions' data. Do you agree with that?
Oh, no, not at all. This is all public data. It's all on the 5300 call report. That is not confidential information. And we put the calculator up, as you recall, at the time, so that credit unions, in making their comments, could easily go in and see where they stood under the proposed rule. And see both in terms of their investment side, their credit side, how that would impact perhaps changes that they might make to help them in making their comments and see how they stood with their peers. So I think it was a very valuable tool. We said at the time it would come down when the comment period is over, because the idea is it's for them to help see where they would land and how they might adjust. After the comment period, of course, we're going to be working on changing the rules, so it's no longer going to be applicable to have that same calculator.